Today, I'm going to try to draw the view from this pagoda in Tongyeong, South Korea. And I'm starting by marking where I think I want these two pillars to sit, as they, along with the rest of the pagoda, will act as a frame for the landscape in the distance, and more specifically, that mountain in the middle. As usual, I'm taking my time with this part of the drawing, and I've been thinking about why this is, why I'm feeling so hesitant in the beginning. And other than my inexperience, which undoubtedly plays a major role, I want to ensure that I don't make any fundamental, unfixable mistakes that might ruin the drawing to a degree that I'd have to redo the video, God forbid. Part of me thinks that that would be just part of the process, and that is valid. But when even a few small mistakes could result in not just an unrecognizable echo of the reference, that I'm actually more okay with, but a messy mass of ink and lines, I think that would make me want to give it another go. I'd want to redo the drawing, and that would mean redoing the video as well. Luckily, I haven't had that experience, but that's the point. I think the slow sketching in the beginning is partially to thank for that. If I did have to redo a video, which I'm not even sure I would do to begin with, it would be a pretty aggravating waste of time. And I probably know that somewhere in the back of my mind. So, yeah, while my amateurishness is certainly part of it, it's also that piece of me that really doesn't want to mess it up beyond repair. So now that the basic structure is sketched in, I can start adding some of these smaller, less structurally relevant lines to the drawing, that is, not the pagoda itself. I'm starting to feel a bit more confident with these. They still look slow and considered on the screen, but I think that'll just be part of my process for a long time. I don't envision myself taking on that slick architectural automotive line work, where each line is really bold and kind of cutting. These lines I'm making here feel in the moment like I'm making really great time as it is, so I'm happy. Also, having stared at this scene for a long time, I've committed to memory some small things, and one of those is that I can see from my perspective the tops and sides of some of these beams, and that I can go ahead and draw them in whenever I want. I'm also drawing them as 3 lines, if that makes sense, instead of drawing one plane and shading it, then adding in the other side later, which is something I do, and I don't know why. But here I'm doing it in a way that I find a lot more comfortable. Granted, these are incredibly straightforward to draw, but I'm just glad I didn't make this any more complicated than it needed to be. Something else I'm noticing is that while I do think it's good for me at this stage to be careful in the beginning, sometimes I'm just so over the top with it, not realizing that what I might do by the end of the drawing could very well undermine all of that, little detail work. For example, drawing the smallest lines to make sure I have room for a light and dark area on the edge of the floor here is largely unnecessary because of everything that I will do from here to the end. It still means something, and you can see it in the final product, but I catch myself doing this kind of thing, doing this with so many insignificant details, and that time could usually be spent in more useful ways. I don't think there's any chance of me changing this anytime soon, but it's something I've noticed. Maybe the best example here would be the mountains. They could have been done so simply, so much more quickly, but I'm just busy trying to make it look like what I see that I overthink it. It's not the end of the world, but those hesitations pile up throughout the drawing, and that time, like I said, could have been better allocated to something like shading, especially here, but we'll get into that in a minute. Still definitely don't know how I want to draw trees. And on the topic I spoke about yesterday, about stylization, trees, at least as context, as more supplemental material, not as the primary subject, they help me understand it a little bit better. If you missed what I talked about in yesterday's video, go back and check that one out so I don't have to remember all my points and rehash them here. Anyway, because trees are maybe literally impossible to render out completely down to the smallest leaf, there has to be some level of decision making. I need to decide to what level I would like to render the tree. Since my understanding of how to draw a tree is so limiting, I'm stuck with either a clumsy, cartoonish tree, one that I would need crayons to accurately portray, or something like I'm doing or have been doing with a bit more realism, but still quite abstract, all things considered. My trees become stylized, but accidentally. But I can see how continuing along this path, getting better at what amounts to something like my method, would foster an approach to drawing trees that ends up being personal to me. On that note, while this channel exists primarily for the drawings, doing these voiceovers and asking so many questions out loud like these, like I did in the previous video, has helped me learn probably just as much as the practice. It stimulates my curiosity, which in turn motivates my, I don't know, vigilance for uncovering the answers to those questions. And I think that's pretty neat. Let me just say before I go into hyperspeed here, which I'm about to because I spend an ungodly amount of time shading this one. There I go. So I sped up the footage. I love the way this looked right before that happened. There's a part of me that wishes I just finished things up subtly, maybe boldened some of the lines in the foreground and just left the rest alone. I thought the shading would be necessary, and judging by the reference, it seems that way. There's a lot of shadow in the pagoda, but I'm learning with every drawing I do that just because I want it to resemble the real thing doesn't mean I need to copy it. I am the one in charge. I can simplify things if I want to. That's really tough for me to accept as I'm making the drawing, but it's something I'm going to try to consistently reiterate to myself in the coming days and weeks. Had I kept this a simple line drawing, I think I would have appreciated it a lot more. And it's not that I dislike the final version. I actually don't mind it at all. It's just that when I can see the process unfold and there's a moment before the end that I prefer, it's just a really strange feeling. It's like I want to reach through the screen and tell myself to stop. So yeah, hopefully the sped up footage isn't too jarring. It just took so much time, and I don't think you would have gotten much, if anything, out of watching it. I went back and forth on whether or not I should even do it, but I think it added another 5 minutes or something like that, if I remember correctly. This one I did at 2,500% speed, which sounds ridiculous, but it still kind of feels a little slow. Ultimately, I didn't want the process to be completely lost to it, though. I didn't want it to feel like I just made a cut and bam, there's all the shading. Although that does happen later. I don't know what happened there. I think I lost the footage somehow, but it's only a small part. Anyway, but I do want to make the overly monotonous stuff in these videos go by with a little bit less friction. That being said, if you hate it, let me know. I don't know how many times I'll be able to ramble on for an extra 5 minutes per video if I do keep it in. But I also don't know how many drawings will include such long-winded shading as it is. If anything, I will probably avoid scenes like this for exactly that reason, or I'll just listen to my intuition next time and stop when I'm ahead and just make it a line drawing. On that note, I've been considering alternative mediums, not now by any means, but in the future. However, maybe for this drawing, a marker would have been useful, definitely more practical. On one hand, it could help me with big blocks of shadows like we have here, but on the other, I barely know how to use a pen as it is, let alone a marker. I have a feeling I would make more of a mess than necessary. Maybe, well, no mess is necessary, you know what I mean? Maybe as I get a better grasp on all of it, drawing with pen, I can slowly integrate other tools like a marker. If you're wondering why I use a pen and not, say, a pencil, there are two reasons. The first is visibility. I found out pretty quickly that you just couldn't see most of the pencil marks on the paper. You see what I struggle with here with the pen. So just imagine all of this in pencil. And this is actually a pretty good example. You can see a bad example actually for this. You can see a lot of what's going on the screen, but every now and then when I'm in the sun, you can't see anything. So the pencil is worse. Every line was just impossibly light, and even by the end, with the final product, it was hard to make out. The second reason is right back to that lack of artistic confidence. As I'm so new to this, I tend to hesitate, and I found that the pencil only exacerbated the issue. Not only could I draw extremely lightly, but I could also erase. I didn't need any more excuses to make the process harder or more drawn out, no pun intended, than it needed to be. Okay, so now you can see it in all of its glory. Maybe now you can understand why I wished I kept it as a line drawing, but that's not to say that I dislike this version. It's a nice way to imply the light on the day, so I'm still pretty happy with it. What do you think? Take a second to let me know in the comments, subscribe to the channel, tell your coworkers about me, high five a stranger, become an astronaut, do whatever you want. As long as you subscribe. Please subscribe. Anyway, thanks for taking the time. I'll see you tomorrow.